Okay, so this video is about moving around in the community, and for blind people, orientation and mobility skills. So there's a term in orientation and mobility called sighted guide. And what that means is that the person who has full vision acts as a guide for the person who's blind. And he holds, it's very specific, he holds your arm right here on the upper part of your arm. And he's like right next to you. They're right next to each other, not behind, not in front of. And this helps Morgan to navigate. In the places mainly that you would use this is, in any kind of new, like, situation where there's like a lot of obstacles and things that you got to move around, and or it's like a tight space and there's a lot of things that he could bump into and that kind of thing. But if he's in a situation where he's can use his cane without bumping into a whole bunch of different things, it might be confusing, or potentially knocking something over, like in a store, then he could use his cane to orient and figure out how to get from point A to point B. But with the sighted guide, you just offer your arm, he holds on to it, and then you provide the verbal cues about the surroundings and ensuring his safety while walking. And what was I going to say about that? You can say, Morgan, if you would like to use a sighted guide, please ask for help. Encourage Morgan to request help before touching the back of his hand, unless Morgan is demonstrating distress. Encourage Morgan to also position his cane out in front of him so he can feel for obstacles. When an area that is not congested, if Morgan initiates using his cane to navigate independently, support this by being aware of his common cane use strategies, which are outlined in the YouTube video on cane use in the playlist. Sometimes when I'm walking with Morgan, and the goal is like we need to walk, he's kind of slow with the cane, and it might be we're on a time crunch or something like that. I will do sighted guide and let him also use his cane so he can feel changes in the surface of the ground in front of him. So he's using the cane a little bit differently in that context, because it's like letting him know there's a big change in the sidewalk, like 2-inch change coming up, and he feels that with the cane, even though he's doing sighted guide at the time. When you get to intersections or corners and crossing streets, encourage Morgan to listen to the traffic patterns and to wait until he doesn't hear any cars coming or passing before crossing the street. I found that he's kind of unreliable. I think he used to be better because he practiced it more, but maybe if more people will practice it with him, he'll get better again. But, I'll say, Morgan, can you hear any cars coming? Let's listen. And then he'll say yes, and there's no cars around, and like that. So his answers aren't always reliable. Like, is it safe to pass now, Morgan? The idea is like if he can hear cars coming, he should definitely not cross. And then an independent blind person, if they don't hear any cars, it's safe to pass. But nowadays we've got electric vehicles, so it's a little trickier. Anyway, when you get to intersections and corners and crossing streets, having him listen to the traffic patterns going both directions if you can, and then when he doesn't hear any cars coming, then he can cross. Some corners in Hillsborough do have beeping sounds to let the blind person know where the light changes. There's some of those down in downtown Hillsborough, around between 3rd and 5th and something like that in Main Street. Just direct Morgan's attention to that, so he can use it as feedback. There's some sighted guide technique videos that I uploaded to YouTube. There's one, Morgan has a technique called shorelining. He knows what that means. And that's when you're in a situation where it's pretty clear for him, and it's possible there's not a lot of people that he's going to be bumping into and stuff like that, where he can use the cane to follow the edge of the building, and that's called, or the edge of the sidewalk or whatever. There's like a division that you can clearly feel with your cane, and that's called shorelining, and he knows what that means. There's another one called touch and drag, where you tap. He likes to use that one too. He tap because you can hear like a lot from just the sound of the tap, and then you drag the cane. You tap and drag. There's another one called that he uses called 2-point touch, where he makes constant contact, and 3-point touch. I'm not sure the difference between 2 and 3-point actually. And then constant contact is just he keeps it there until there's a snag, and then he lifts it up and he puts it back down, and it's constant. And then there's diagonal cane techniques that a lot of blind people use, and there's a video about that too, giving you good overviews of all these different techniques that you can remind him of when you're in the appropriate situation for that technique. The last one that is the diagonal one, which is really good because it's the cane. It's kind of hard to see with me sitting here like this, but the cane crosses over in front of the person at a diagonal, and then it goes back and forth like a diagonal. Oh no, actually with the diagonal you just keep it that way. And what that does is it's protecting the whole body theoretically from anything that could come in the path, but it actually doesn't really take care of it if there's something up above there are where the cane is, so it still has hazards. All right, let's see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the doors. There is a specific way to use the white cane to scan for the handle and potential obstacles before opening a door to a business, a building that's not Morgan's house. They use it to protect the hands mainly and avoid getting hurting their fingers, such as getting them stuck in the closing door. The cane protects the hand. And there's also a video about that. In other words, instead of using your hand, you use the cane. And that can be very useful, but Morgan hasn't practiced that very much, so it would be another thing that you would have to kind of prompt a little bit and also name for him. Depending on the situation, he might need you to provide a sighted guide while you're directing him to go through the door, or to tap on the door, and you might need to help him with actually opening the door because again, a lot of the doors are heavy, and that might be too much for Morgan, the weight of the door. Sometimes what I'll have him do is I have him turn if I see there's nobody on the other side of the door, I'll just have him like put his back on the door and push against it, which is also safe because he's not putting his hands in harm's way, and the weight of the body helps him move the door. But I'll say, oh, there's nobody behind the door now, so we can do this, because you wouldn't want him to just be doing it without knowing that there might be someone who could get hurt on the other side. So then, let's see. Oh, my note says another thing is you would need to ensure that Morgan is on the hinge side of the door for better orientation, because he could be reaching to the wrong, like he might be reaching to the hinge instead of the opening part of the door that swings. And so, that's just another thing you can do to kind of tap and say, okay, the handle's on this side over here, Morgan, so come over here, redirecting him if he's in the wrong position. DSPs can also help Morgan by encouraging him to explore and describing what he's experiencing while still not bombarding him with too many words. I already kind of said that earlier. You can also give him directions like, feel to the right. There's a planter right there and you can go around it, or something like that.